All right, guys, super excited to show you this. We're gonna do a quick walkthrough on everything that comes inside the Hive Kit. Okay, the Generational Hive is something that is really quite special because of its ease of assembly. There are some tools that are gonna be required, such as drilling, for example. No saws, you're not gonna need to cut anything, but we do need you to drill some holes. And so I just wanna walk you through this and show you how to do this, okay? It's gonna be really cool, really cut and paste, and once you see how it all comes together, it's gonna make worlds of sense for you. So step by step, what we're gonna do first is I'm gonna show you what comes in the kit and everything that's included inside of that kit that you'll receive when you get your kit. Then the next stage, we're gonna go into, I'm gonna put everything off to the side here, and we're gonna go into opening up these pack 1 and pack 2, and we're gonna explain how to assemble them, how to glue them, how to put them together. No air guns or any crazy shop tools required at that stage. Just glue and a rubber mallet, really. And then we're gonna go into how to stuff the wool and how all of this eventually becomes the hive that you've now assembled into a box that you then have to start to drill out at that phase, okay? And once all the drilling is done, once the box is assembled, and once we've got everything glued and it's shirred up and ready and the lid's on top, we're gonna transition over and we're gonna show you how to assemble the frames, and then we're gonna show you how to wire the frames. Once all of that is done, we've got a full ready to go box, just like this behind me here. And we started with something like this, okay? So these are all kits here. This is your finished box. Of course, we'll have the hive doors on there for you as well. So all of this comes inside your kit. So let's get into it and we'll start breaking down what's included here. Okay guys, so here's what comes in your kit. You're gonna have your 2x4 bracing. This is where your doors are drilled through. These two pieces of 2x4 are some of the most important in the kit. You cannot put the doors on your hive unless you have these 2x4s. So please make sure that you've installed these correctly when we get to that point. Okay, the next thing that's gonna come in your kit is gonna be your doors. Now we have two versions of doors. You'll receive the doors and the screws to fasten them. Now, depending on the version that you receive, you may get steel or you may get 3D printed doors. Okay, the next thing that's gonna come in your kit is gonna be your frames. So there are 20 frames per hive, okay? So the first thing is we have your bottoms. These are all the bottoms of your frames. As you can see here, I'll just show you. So this is your frame bottom. These are gonna be your sides, and then you're gonna have your top bar. Okay, so the next thing that comes in the kit's gonna be your divider board. This is what makes the whole hive function once we get bees in it. If you had all 20 frames wide open and you had a swarm come in, that cavity would actually be too big for them. They would not like that size. So we use the divider board to essentially cut the size of the hive in half, completely closing off one half of it. I usually do about 8 frames. And then the swarm will come in, or you'll put your swarm in, transferring out of your hive trap, which is about 7 frames, I believe. And then they'll actually fill that cavity a lot more effectively. And then when you're ready, you simply lift this up, put thumbtacks on the bottom of each one and set it back into place. And that allows them to come and go underneath and then access the whole other half of the hive and fill up the rest of the frames. If you ever feel like it, you can even remove it completely over to the side once they've taken advantage of the space they have inside the hive. But this is a really important tool for actually functioning as the generational hive is designed to do. You will not be able to be as successful without knowing how to use your divider board. So this is really important. Okay, so now that we've got the doors, the divider boards, the interior framing, and your hive frames all kind of ironed out, you're gonna be looking at your biggest part of the kit, which is the box itself. You have pack 1 and pack 2. Now pack 1 and pack 2 both come with their own individual setups, and the labeling may or may not end up crossing depending on who's working that day, I've realized. But we have a pretty good system in place with pack 1 and pack 2. So just make sure that the pack that you start with is the pack that I outline next once we start jumping into actually doing the assembly. Okay, the last thing, I actually almost overlooked this for you. This is the most important. They're all most important. The wool. So this is raw sheep's wool that actually comes from small family homesteads who shear their sheep and donate it, or we purchase it on the behalf of our hives. So this is really cool because of the way that this is sourced is straight from family farms here in the United States. It's not something that is treated in any way. This is as raw as it gets, straight off of the sheep. Now, a couple disclaimers I will tell you. Raw sheep's wool is not treated in any way, shape, or form. It is literally cut off the sheep, put into a bag, and given to us. We do not go through an extensive, labor-intensive filtration of all of the wool. We do our best to make sure that we're taking the cleanest cuts out of the bag, but oftentimes when you receive your wool, it will come with all of the debris that is associated with keeping sheep. Okay, so when you open this up, you're only going to receive about 7 pounds. You may have a little bit more than that, but never less. The last one that I actually delivered, we actually had an excess with us at the time, so I actually gave them almost a full bag, and I hope that they make use of it, but you do not need that much in your hive. You need 7 pounds in your hive, and I'll show you how to stuff it when you get to that point. Okay, so how do you know which one you're gonna start with? Okay, we're looking at the interior box and the exterior box. We have double walls in these insulated hives, okay? So we're gonna assemble the interior box first, then we're gonna move on to the exterior box. You should be doing this with me. Start by opening all the saran wrap, nicely encapsulating your hive. Set that off to the side. And then we're gonna need a couple tools. All right, this is everything that you're gonna need to take this kit from a pile of wood to an operating hive, with the exception of painting it, okay? These are the tools that I use every time that we do this, and the tools that I have in a box set aside for when we're doing assembly on the road, in our trailer, or at a workshop with the community anywhere in North America. As you know, we travel and teach, and we help people establish their homesteads and their apiaries all over the country, and up into Canada. Eventually, hopefully down into South America as well. But for now, let's jump into it here and see what we got. All right, so we're just gonna work our way over from left to right. We'll go across the corner here. So first things first is we have just a really cheap Ryobi nailer. This stapler or brad nailer is electric, and it's really handy because there's no cords, no big air compressor needed. So I recommend that you get a cordless electric brad nailer. Now the second thing is going to be a drill, a screw gun and a drill. When we get to the screw gun, it's really just a few screws we're slapping into this. You've only got maybe, I think, 12 total, something like that. The drill is only used for the ventilation in the roof and for the hive doors itself that you'll be drilling out. These are pretty important. Now this here, you can use a pocket knife. You really don't need this. It's just something to help open up the plastic and to get things all torn apart and open so you can actually do all of this. Now the blocks of wood are fairly important. You can see that I've already used these ones a couple times, and I'll explain why and how we're using them. But the 2 blocks of wood are going to be your best friends. Now the second block is going to be cut to a dimension, if you can, to help you on the inside of the hive. When you watch the video, you'll get to the point where I talk about the second block of wood and why it's handy. So I recommend that having at least a long one set aside that you can cut down to size when you're ready. Okay, the next thing is going to be a regular stapler. We're going to use that stapler to just put the vents on in the lid so that the bugs and the critters don't actually crawl into the lid and end up making a home in there where the bees don't live, but critters can. The screening inside that door keeps all the bugs out, but still allows for the draft and ventilation. So that's what the stapler's for. Now the spare battery, obviously that goes to the drills. The glue, you can do 2 hives with one of these 4-ounce bottles of Tight Bond 3. Tight Bond 2 will be okay as well. Then we have a Forstner bit, and we're using 1.5 inch Forstner bit. You could probably get up to 1 3/4. I wouldn't go over 2 inches. You can use the size of the door on your hive itself right here to gauge how big of a bit you need. I use 2.5 when we're fabricating all of these, but you can actually go just a little bit bigger if you have one handy. Now you're going to need a T20 bit. The screws we send you are T20. You're going to need a bit, and then you're going to need a Phillips. The Phillips are for putting on the doors themselves as well. And you can do that by hand if you don't want to use your drill. The next thing, and probably the most used tool in the entire kit, is going to be the rubber mallet. You got a nice fancy one, good on you. A really simple Home Depot knockoff, dollar store knockoff rubber mallet works fine. I actually use my hand for the majority of the assemblies. But rubber mallet, if you're trying to keep your hands safe, I recommend that you use that in combination with your block of wood as you're assembling all of this, so you're not beating on your hive, you're beating on the piece of wood. All right, now this is just your hive brush for when you're actually in your hive and you're scraping bees off of the comb. And I use it actually to brush all of the debris from doing all the drilling off into a bucket, so we can take that and take all that sawdust out into the garden. That becomes compost. Now this paint stick is you're going to use to insulate at one point. So before you get started with your hive, go ahead and get yourself some Kills primer, exterior primer, house primer, and some Kills exterior colored paint to color your hives with. You can also do acrylic paint that you can use to decorate the hives, use kids' handprints, whatever you like, but get yourself a nice long paint stick while you're there. These are excellent for the two end walls we're going to insulate, and I'll show you why when we get to that point as well. Of course, you're going to need some staples, and you're going to need some brad nails. We have about 1.5 inches in brad nails, and then about a 1/4 inch in staples. Now the gloves we're using when we're touching the wool, so that we don't have to go back to touching our nice clean wood and getting all of the oil from the raw wool, which is really good oil, is actually pest preventative, all over the exterior of our hive. You can leave fingerprints and all that all over it. So you'll be switching back and forth for a couple times between insulating and touching the nice hive. So use some gloves when you're using that so you don't dirty up your hive and have to clean it later. That's pretty much it. This is everything that we need in order to assemble our hives, including the frames. And I'll show you how we do that when we get to it. Okay, so at this point, you just need a couple tools, quite literally 2 tools. We're gonna go with a rubber mallet and the glue. Now, just for the sake of beauty and keeping it pretty, when you're beating on it with a rubber mallet, it can scar it up pretty good. So I recommend that you use a 2x4. So let's set all the tools off to the side so you have full table access here, because we're gonna open this up and start to see what's on the inside here. So the first boards you need are these end panels. You'll know they're the end panels because they have this big long slit in them. Okay, and there is something important I want you to pay attention to when the time comes on the interior box as far as where the holes go for the placement of your doors. So don't get too ahead of me here and start going crazy. Make sure you catch that point or you'll assemble it backwards. Okay, now once you've got your side paneling doors, you're gonna have your actual wall. So this slit here and this slit here is where the base of the hive is gonna, of the interior box is gonna sit. So before we get too crazy here, let's set one wall panel aside, one end panel aside, and we're gonna set your floor, and you'll notice all of these, the interior bottom, interior back, they're all labeled for you to be able to tell where they go. We're gonna set that aside as well, and we're just gonna start with one edge panel. So your edge panel, you're gonna get your glue, your end panel. Don't glue your hand like I just did. And we're gonna glue from the top along the holes all the way down to the very bottom. And we're gonna do the same thing on both sides. Okay, and we can set that to the side. Now, here on my kitchen table, we're not in a shop. I brought a kitchen table in here just to show you that you can do this on a kitchen table. We're gonna stand this up. Okay, so you have your notch here is gonna align with your notch here, and we're gonna put the dowel rods right into the hole. Stand it up. Give it a couple smacks just so it sits nicely. While you grab your mallet and your block of wood, and I'm gonna go tap it in. You'll hear that nice, more dense thud, knowing it's seated all the way. Just double check. You wanna make sure you got a good clean seam right there, okay? These are all CNC machine cut. They're very fine cuts, so you should have really tight tolerances. If you don't have a tight tolerance, try beating it out a little bit more. Okay, now we're gonna move on to the next side. We glued both, so we can just go ahead and move on. And this is where I was telling you to pay close attention. When you put this one in right here, you're gonna notice, real quick before I do this, you're gonna notice that there are holes pre-drilled right here. This now becomes the front of your hive, okay? Doesn't really matter which way it goes on, but it does matter that you remember that. for the exterior box. Okay, give ourselves some more room, and we're going to glue the next piece on. We're going to glue it the exact same way that we glued the other one. Straight line all the way to the base. Okay, now that we got that all glued and on both sides here, pause for just a moment. And we're going to slide in our interior bottom. This is the bottom of the hive where all the bees will hang out. Okay. Now we don't need to glue this. You're going to slide it into the two notches right here between the interior walls. Now, you'll notice when I'm doing this, I'm actually holding it with my biceps right here on the edges of my arm and then grabbing it on the edge. That helps keep it from fluctuating too much. So I'm balancing it here with my arms while I'm feeding it in. It makes it worlds easier. And you just give it a thud, make sure it's nice and secure. Try not to drip too much glue on my nice kitchen table. And line it up with the dowels. And I'm just gonna use my palms. Just make sure that's nice and seated. Okay, now when you're done with this, you should see a good seat. Oh yeah, look at that. So good thing I'm checking. I can see I had a good gap there. Okay, so check both sides. Yep, nice and solid. Okay, now that we've got the interior box done, we need to insulate the base before we can move forward. I recommend that you put on some gloves because you're going to be dealing with raw sheep's wool that have been laying around out in their field and doing their thing for a while now. So you're going to be touching the rest of the box after you touch the wool. So even if you're a little bit more hardened and you just want to get your hands in there, you're going to dirty up your hive if you don't wear gloves. So right here, let's throw on some gloves. Okay, we're ready. Let's go ahead and get some wool. Now the way that I pack the wool, it does usually come off the sheep in nice blanket coats, but sometimes it doesn't. And I'm just going to try to lay out the coat nice and flat. I don't have an exact science for you on the specific amount you're going to put right here. I just like to feel it out. Now, when we're just throwing it on here, we don't need to be too particular. We'll clean it all up and sort it out nice before here in a minute. The biggest goal is just to make sure that you have it even. You don't want to have a chunk somewhere and no wool somewhere else. And you can see I'm a little heavy on this side, so I'm just going to spread it out and crunch it down, tear it a little bit to get it nice and flat. You don't want it to be too bulgy on one particular side or it'll put pressure on the exterior box while the glue is drying. So if you have too much in here, it has the potential of separating it a little bit while you're waiting for that glue to hold nice and strong. Okay, now I feel like I'm good there. I got a good amount here, good amount here. No real bulk, so I'm just feeling it here. Oh, actually I do have a little bit of excess here, just in that spot. There you go. Nice even distribution of the insulation. Okay, that's what you're going for as we do this box wide. Now, before you finish right here, grab your fingers and push the wool down around the perimeter so that none of it is overlapping the wood. If it's overlapping the wood, it will prevent a seat when you press the bottom back on, the bottom panel. Okay, now you're gonna notice that your pack only has a lid left. You're gonna be like, well, what do I do? Is this big board over here supposed to go? Nope, pause. We're gonna set this to the side, scoot it off to the table if you have to. I'm just gonna leave it here because I got plenty of room on my little 4x4 or 4x5 table here. And we're gonna grab the second pack, set it right on top. We're gonna open up into that one now. Okay, so now that I'm handling nice clean wood, I'm gonna go ahead and take off those dirty gloves and leave them with the wool. In opening up mine, I actually have the board I need is right here on top. It's gonna be the exterior bottom board. Okay, so I've got my exterior bottom board here now, and I just have it with the holes facing up for just a minute so that we can glue it down. So let's get our glue. And take note of how far the board underneath goes. So you don't stop your glue here at the hole. You're gonna take it all the way to the edge, but on this way, you're not gonna go to the edge, okay? So just pay attention to, try to line it up where your boards are. Give yourself a generous amount of glue on this interior box because this is where the primary insulation is going to be. And the exterior, you wanna be a little bit more frugal because it can bleed out and you can see that. And you wanna keep it pretty, right? So you can cherish your beehive for years to come and not have to see that big old chunk of glue that you left there. All right, now we're flipping it over. And we're just gonna line it up. And I actually got a little bit of wool on the inside. I'm just gonna tuck back in there. And then line up the holes. And tamp it down. All right, just gonna check real quick that I got a nice firm seat all the way around, looks good. Now we're gonna go ahead and just rotate it over once. Okay, now that we got this rolled over onto its side here, we can insulate this side, but before you can put this top on, you'll notice that you have to put these ends on. So let me show you that real quick. Okay, so I have the exterior right end and the exterior left end. They're actually universal, doesn't really matter which way it goes on. But you cannot put this top plate on without putting this on here. All right, so I've got that holes up here, and all we're doing is we're gonna do one spread of glue along the base because there's only, for now, only one point where this is gonna seat on the box. It's gonna be right here. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Now, I'm gonna do this side first. We want to be kind of quick about it because the glue will run. And I'm just gonna slap it on with my palm there. Okay, now we're just gonna do the same thing on the other side. Trying to be quick about it without getting glue on your mom's table or your wife's table. All right. Okay. Both ends are on at this point. We can go ahead and insulate this back panel. Okay, now before we slap these ends on, I want you to just make sure that you're not seeing any pre-drills here. If you see pre-drills here, you're insulating the wrong side, so flip it over. Let's pull out some more wool. We're gonna do a pretty hefty amount on the side paneling. Okay, so I'm just to the point now where I'm almost done. And same thing, I want you to pay real close attention to how thick you're getting it and making sure that you've got a good even spread, packing it down a little bit. Now note right here, you will have the opportunity to stuff some more in on the end, and I'll show you that in a minute if you're a little bit shy because there's no wall right here. Okay, I've cleaned up my edges a little bit and I've got a good seat. So now I'm just gonna go ahead and slap on my top plate. Now, this is gonna be a lot of glue, so if I put it all on that side wall there, and then I try to rotate it over, chances of it running are pretty high. So I'm gonna go ahead and just glue this edge this time, and just be extra careful not to get it on the exterior walls. Okay, at this point we can go ahead and take our gloves off so that we can touch our nice clean board again. And you're gonna be looking for the exterior back panel. The exterior back looks like this, okay? And we're going to have our dowel rods facing up toward the top opening of the hive. We're just gonna go ahead and seat that real quick. Now this one, it might not go on right away because these walls here fluctuate a little bit. So just start in the back and then work your way up to the front and it'll help everything seat nicely. Okay. Grab your interior box to flip it over, not the exterior panels. All right, there you go. Now you're nice and solid. Now, when it comes time to it, here in just a minute, we're gonna insulate these sides, and I'll show you how to do that. This is also an opportunity when we get to that point to put some more in the top right here. Just make sure that insulation is all the way up to the top rim, because without a sidewall there, sometimes it can get a little bit low on this end. So we'll top that off when we get to it. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and flip this over again. So now we're seeing our pre-drills. All these pre-drilled holes right here need to align with the pre-drilled holes on this exterior wall. This is the exterior front panel. Okay, now before we go ahead and put this all together, I just want to show you again. We've got pre-drills, just one single hole on this exterior front panel. The reason I'm pushing that so hard is because I myself have assembled this without these pre-drills aligning, and you've got them on the wrong side. Now what happens is if you do that, you can't just fill it. You actually have to tear it all back apart with glue and everything in it, and it's just a real pain. So pay close attention to the pre-drills. Let's get everything lined up nice and orderly the first time. Okay, this is the point where we're gonna be using our 2x4s that come in your kit. So the way that we're gonna use these, right off the bat here, take your smaller one, place it all the way against the back, slide your big board all the way down to it. That's the gap you need right there to get the hive doors drilled in through this in the perfect center of the 2x4. So pause here while this is nice and fastened, and let's screw it in from the inside. Okay, also included with your kit, you're gonna have these 2-inch T20 hex bit screws. Right now we only need 3 of them. So go ahead and fasten up your drill here, and let's get this screwed in. All right, make sure it's nice and snug in the back. And we're just trying to fasten it so that we can complete the rest of the assembly. Right now. Dad. I'm Dad. Okay, now at this point, if you are a warm climate and you've ordered 4 holes, that's why you'll have the second one. So if you've been wondering this whole time why you don't have a short board, this is why. Cold climates, you do not need this upper hole. For hot climates like we are here in Missouri, we can get pretty toasty. We drill a 4th hole for ventilation to help let some of that heat out in the peak of summer. So I'm just gonna go ahead and center this with my pre-drilled holes, and then we'll do the same thing and screw this in from the inside. And we're making sure that this 2x4 is firm up against this 2x4 here. So there's no gap here, and there's a nice gap here. Okay, at this point, we're gonna go ahead and insulate the next section. So let's go ahead and toss our gloves on here. Grab your wool, and you're gonna get a small strip in this bottom piece between the bottom wall and the 2x4 first. Get it nice and packed in there. You don't want to jam it too tight. You want that air gaps in your insulation, but do get a generous amount in there. Okay, same thing, tuck it in, make sure that you're not getting any debris on the wood so that it still remains nice and seated when you slam it all together here. Okay, and then we're going to insulate these 2 quarters. Just keeping away from clumps and keeping it evenly distributed is the goal. And about done with that side, we'll do the other side here. And if you do this with a smile on your face, it has better insulation when you're done. I heard that from a little elf once. Tuck in any last little stragglers, and let's glue it. We're going to do it the same way that we did the last one, gluing this side here so that we don't have to lift up a big panel that has the potential to run the glue. Doesn't need to be completely perfect bead, but it does need to be a solid bead. You don't want to, because we're dealing with bugs here, right? So you don't want to leave gaps in your glue. Doesn't need to be the thickest, most gorgeous, beautiful bead you've ever seen, but it does absolutely need to be a solid bead. Okay, so if you miss any gaps, that won't get smashed and filled when you press the two together. Make sure you're giving it a good goop. And then I like to just do one trail over the 2x4s for extra security there, and to keep it nice and seated. And those ones can be pretty thick, just to make sure that everything is seated well. Okay, now you've noticed for this whole time, I've just been hitting it in with my hands. I don't recommend that you do that. Use a rubber mallet so you're not hurting yourself, okay? All right, now here we go. We're gonna put together this front panel here. Again, we've got our pre-drills lined up with our pre-drills, and we're just gonna make sure that all the glue got where we want it and set this in. I'm just gonna line it up on one side and then drop it into place. It'll always line up better on the backs than it will on the edges, just right off when you first set it down. So I tamp in the back first, and then you might have to hold the exterior wall into place while you get that in. Okay, now go ahead and run around it one last time to get in all the missing pieces. And you want to get this side nice and secure. Hitting this one real firmly will kind of smash down what's underneath it as well, locking everything together. This is really the kind of the finishing touch of the hive before we put on the capstone here. So you should be good to go. Let's go ahead and get the top on. Okay, we've rotated the hive over at this point, and we are now ready to stuff wool into the ends. Unfortunately, we do not supply the stick to do that. We were previous, and it was a little bit more of a difficult to source than we thought. So when you pick up the paint to do this, get yourself a stick and use the paint stick to shove it in there. That's the way that I found to be the easiest. And we advise you before you even receive your hive to get your paint ready. You're going to want to use Kiehl's exterior primer, and then follow that up with an exterior color, and then you can use acrylic paint to actually decorate and make it yours. So when you go pick up your paint, this is where you're going to want to use to fill these end walls. Okay, I've got my paint stick. We're using a longer version here, not these little short ones, right? Because we got to go the whole length. And then we got our wool. Now the easiest way that I have found to do this is actually not to use full big sheets. It's actually to take it one bite at a time, put it in the side, and then with your stick, not like this, but nice and horizontal, shove it into the very bottom. And we're not trying to pack it. Again, you want the air spacing. This is probably the hardest part of the whole assembly, is just feeding these end walls full of wool. So we're just gonna get it in there. Use the kind of your muscle gauges here to determine how much you're getting in there. At this point, because you've got the front and the back full, you should be able to just split what you have left in your case between the two ends, and you'll be safe. Just make sure that you're not packing it too tightly. It's better to have it a little bit looser than it is to have it ridiculously tight, because you can always tighten it up, but once you've pushed it down, you cannot really fluff it back out. Again, our goal in doing this is to get it nice and even. So kind of keep a mental note of what it looks like in there while you're evenly distributing from the very, very bottom all the way to the top of this wall. Trying to avoid the clumps. It's not as important to avoid dense clumps on the end walls as it is on the middle walls, because you can't cause much bulging over here. You pack the middle walls a little bit too tight, you can run into that because it's such a long span, but for the most part this is pretty self-explanatory. All right, I'm just going to top it off. Got that pretty well filled, and then I'm going to go ahead and top off this one here just by hand as well, because I've got the wool out again. I want to make sure that it's packed up to the brim here. Insulation is the key ingredient in our entire design. It's really the reason these hives are so successful. We mimic nature and the natural tree trunk by insulating. The natural tree trunk actually is made up of little straws in all the trunk. The trunk itself is like a vertical series of straws holding them all like that, and they move water up and down and back and forth from the leaves to the roots, and that thermal retention power of a tree is just incredible, and those bees take advantage of it in nature. So when we use Langstroth boxes like we are used to in America today, we're missing out on the whole purpose of the tree being the home of the bees. Bees don't find homes in nature just anywhere, in the United States anyways, because we're traditionally a cold climate for the most part, and so they are looking for insulation. They are looking for places that have like even geothermal properties, like your irrigation access. You'll find them especially out in the Rocky Mountains. You'll find them in your irrigation ways, your valve covers for your irrigation system all the time, because of that geothermal temperature control. So we want to mimic that. We're just doing what God already did by putting insulation in our hives. He's a lot smarter than us. One of the key benefits of having a regenerative apiary is that you are able to supplement the rest of the crops on your property. Just like the almond farmers out in California, they pay beekeepers to ship them out there and pollinate the almond fields and the orchards, but they spray tons and tons of pesticide, and those bees really struggle quite a bit and are not traditionally kept for the purpose of having recurring seasons. They are kept as a profit, where they're just trying to get the surplus honey at the end of the year, the cash crop from the almond farmers, paying them to have their hives there, and then they're paid twice by the end of the season, which is a good, business strategy. But you lose your bees at the end of the year. They struggle quite a bit with the pesticides, and you're not out there taking care of them. The almond farmers handle most of that for you, and you just ship them out on big trucks. And so what you're able to do at home now is grow yourself a food forest, grow yourself a regenerative ecological garden, get yourself something where there are no poisons put into the food that you're eating, and use these natural beekeeping processes, mimicking nature, keeping things holistic, to not only amplify that food crop so you have a holistic surplus for your family, but also to get the honey yield at the end of the season, so you're getting paid twice in the form of holistic, healthy food. Okay, now we're done there, so let's go ahead and just kind of pick up any straggling wool we had fall onto the inside. Happens every time. Now I'm going to go ahead and take my gloves off again, and we're just going to clean up this exterior a little bit. Okay, now when you get into the point where you're gluing this in, I want you to make sure that you're not putting a whole bunch of glue right here where the frames are going to sit. It is okay if you get a little bit on it, because you're actually going to help with waterproofing a little bit, But make sure that when you come to it, put your finger on there or get a wet rag and run it along the edge to flatten it out. If you don't flatten it out on this rim right here, then when your frames sit on that rim and they are supposed to move back and forth, they'll get stuck on the dried glue beads. So let's just make sure it's all nice and smooth. A little bit of glue is okay, it's not gonna hurt it, but smooth it out. There we go, nice and clean. Okay, we're just gonna glue the exterior. Now I have found that with these glue bottles, I can get through 2 hives exactly with one of these glue bottles. That is the last amount of glue that we need for the hive. I was a little short to do the lid with the same bottle, but we got the boxes done. Now we're gonna go ahead and set this in place. Amp it down. Oof. All right, that one's gonna take a little bit more of a hit, so let's grab our mallet. Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and do the lid. So to do the lid, it's pretty simple. Just for a minute, we'll clean out the interior when we're done. I'm just gonna set the divider board, comes in your kit, on the side. And I'm gonna take the lid, and we're actually gonna assemble the lid right on top of the hive. Now lay your divider board down. Look at those tight tolerances. Ah. All right, let's get the exterior walls of your hive first. They're gonna be, these thinner ones here are the interior. These wider ones, these are gonna be the exterior. And they should be labeled for you in your kit as well. Okay, this is pretty quick, so we'll just bust it out here real fast. Okay, we're just gonna run the glue here on both ends of our lengthwise panel, the front and back. These front and back boards here. And then when you're putting your ends on, we're gonna stand them up and put them onto here. Line up the dowels with the dowels of your end board, but make sure that these pre-drills are facing out. They're gonna be the exterior. You wanna see them on the outside of your hive, okay? So we lined up our dowels and we set it in like so, okay? So my board's actually flipped around this way. I'm gonna put it in. And just kind of work it in for a minute there so you can grab your tools. I'm just gonna set it right up there on top of those dowels and continue your assembly. Ta-da! There you go. Okay, now that that one is all done, I actually am not tall enough where I'm standing. Usually we have a lower table, so I'm gonna take it off and we're just gonna do the exact same thing. We're gonna glue the edges right here. We're gonna slap it onto the top of this. Okay, now that we've got the ring all the way around the perimeter of our door, we're gonna just set it to the side for a second. All right, so we're gonna go on the exterior set first. And we're just going to make a nice even bead all the way across. Now we're gonna go ahead and set this right on top. Okay, grab your board and hammer it in. Okay, now you're gonna wanna tamp the corners just to lock it all in. And that's it. You're good to go. So now we're gonna do the interior panels. Okay, so these interior panels actually go into the hive a little bit differently. So I'm going to try to angle this down and show you how we're doing it. Okay, so for the interior panels, you have the end boards here that actually run the full length all the way across. So you have to put these ones in first. So first things first, let's glue it. We're just gonna glue all the way around the perimeter again. And then when we come back through, if you'd like, you can do a thicker bead along the perimeter wall as well, because all the insulation's in the bottom. And your bees will actually lay propolis between all of the frames in here, sealing it all off. So this is gonna basically be a big air gap on top. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and put these end panels in. So just line up the holes, set it into place, and grab your mallet. This is again where having a block of wood comes in handy. I like to set the end right in the center, and hammer that down, and then move to either end. There you go. Okay, now we're gonna put these longer paneling in. If you like, at this point here, you can take off your stickers. Okay, and then we're gonna do the exact same thing with this other side. Okay, a couple quick things to note when you're putting your lid together. As you're hammering all that in, it's causing kind of a reverse reverberation here, and you're gonna separate your exterior panels from your lower board again. So go ahead, back through it one more time, tamp your corners down and make sure you're not getting any separation. Okay, now I'm just gonna check my seams all the way around. Interior looks good. I'll go ahead and check the exterior here. That looks great. Now you can go ahead and flip it around. And we're done. At this point, the only thing left to do to get your hive ready for bees is to drill out all the ventilation, the doors, and then frame the interior. From there, we're just going to do the paint and primer, and then we're going to put this outside, decorated with our family's handprints and beautified, and allow it to receive some bees. And at that point, I'll teach you how to set just a quarter of this as a natural built-in swarm catch. You can even do both sides if you decide to get 2 divider boards in here, or all 3. I have seen people keep a whole hive on either end of the box simultaneously, but I've never done that myself. And there's just lots of ways that you can use the interior space when you have those divider boards to completely customize the hollow cavity and the size there. So lots of cool things to get into when we actually get some bees into this. So let's roll forward and we'll get into the shop to drill the rest out. All right, so let's roll forward here, and we're going to set all this off to the side so that we can drill out the remainder. Okay, at this stage, we're gonna be pulling out the Forstner bit and your hive doors. Now the Forstner bit and the drill is not included with your kit. You're going to be wanting to use the Forstner bits because your typical hole saw is actually going to be too short to get through this chunk of wood here. We got quite a bit of distance to clear. So Forstner bits will be is always the choice that we use. It'll be the easiest way for you. We use an 1.5 inches, and if you're not sure, you can go ahead and take these to the store with you. Or size it up to what you've got already, and just make sure that it's the rough dimensions of the actual hive doors here. Okay, so when we get to the point of actually drilling this out, you're just going to start it straight up and down, and then you're actually going to give it a slight tilt when you're going in. So start straight up and down and then tilt just a little bit. The reason for that is that when this box is set upright, we want it to shed water, not move water into the hive and flood the bottom of your hive. You will never ever keep bees in this hive if you fill the interior with water. They will not like that at all. So let's go ahead and make sure we got a good tilt and they are moving up to get into the hive. You don't want to go crazy dramatic tilt. We're just looking for a rough angle here. It doesn't need to be an exact science, but try to find yourself a nice comfortable angle that you can go on. All 3 of them, keep it uniform. Okay, so for this part, I like to, before I start drilling out with the Forstner bit, I like to get myself 2 additional boards. It's a little bit more convenient if you have one that can go all the way across. If you're a woodsman, you'll know why. Otherwise, the purpose is because when you start drilling through When you get to the end right there, it has the tendency with your downward pressure to break through the bottom of the plywood. So I recommend that you give yourself something solid, give yourself another board that you can put underneath there and keep it nice and tight, and make sure that it's aligned with the hole that you're drilling. It's simple enough to do. We're just going to take our board, put it all the way against the back, slide it up, slide it over, and now we're lined up. Pretty simple. So let's go ahead and put the other board underneath there to lock it in place, and then we can start drilling. All right, so for this part, again, we're just gonna start straight down, and then give yourself a little tilt. Okay, now you'll feel it break through each layer. You have 1, 2, 3 layers before you hit your 2x4. That's propped up on the interior here. When you get to that point, when you feel that second layer break through and you're in the last sheet of plywood here, it's best to lay off the pressure a little bit so you don't push down and give yourself a huge splinter of ply. There we go. Okay, so that's through. I'm going to try to save all these this sawdust here, because this will actually be great to go put into the garden compost. Okay, we're going to move over to the next hole. This is why I said it's easier if you have one long board that goes across all of them. Then you don't have to do this every time you drill. Okay, that's all there is to it. So now we're going to save all of these shavings to go into the garden, and we are going to just do a quick sand over the top just to make sure there's no splinters. We're going to save all of these shavings. Okay, so this is pretty self-explanatory. Put your hole where you want it there. I like to do just nice and centered and screw it on. You don't want to go too tight because then you won't be able to turn it. So back it off a little bit if you snug it too much like I just did. And that'll allow you to rotate it around and decide how you want to use it. All right, so this is all that we need in order to complete the lid. Now I'm using a 1/2-inch drill bit, and my drill battery, of course. Bigger batteries always last a little bit better while you're drilling things out. We're going to use our 2 blocks again, and then I just, for convenience, use 2 clamps that help me do this solo. If you've got your spouse or somebody else with you, it makes it a lot easier when they can hold one side, but doing it solo, definitely recommend these. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to come over there so you can see a little bit easier. So your first block, we're just going to set underneath, so we have a little bit of an angle here. This block here, I'm going to set in a line with all these. You can see I've done this a couple times already on this block, so I'm going to use a new fresh side here. And then I'm actually just going to crimp this down nice and tight. Now I'm going to come over here, I'm going to do the same thing on this side. Alright, I actually have to use a different clamp. I usually use this one. So this is a little bit longer. Now all I'm doing is clamping it to the table so that I can get some force on it. Okay, now from right here, we're just going to follow our pilot holes here, and then I'm going to move this over to do both sides without breaking through the back, just like we did with the interior box. Also, please note that we're starting with a straight hole but then we're gonna give ourselves a downward angle so it sheds water on the outside. We're not pulling water on the inside. Make sure you're not down like this and you're pulling water into the box. When water falls from the top down to the bottom of the hive, we want it to shed water, okay? So get that good 20-degree angle or so on there. That's it. I'll go ahead and sand that, and we're gonna do the same thing on all 4 sides. All right, at this point, we're done drilling out all the holes. I've collected all of my sawdust for the garden, and we're ready to go ahead and put on the screening to prevent insects and mice or little critters from making a home inside this lid here. These holes here are gonna help all that rising heat in the peak of summer leave the hive so you don't get comb collapse. Comb collapse happens when the comb on the inside, under all the weight of that honey, gets too warm, and it'll actually soften and it can fall right off of the frame. And so we don't want that to happen, so we created some ventilation. The bees will actually use that ventilation if they want, where they'll poke a hole through their propolis and they'll all fan. And they always stand out on the exterior of the hive here, and they will detach their wings from their skeletal structure on the inside and vibrate to generate warmth in the winter. But on the outside during the summer, they'll actually flap their wings and they'll create a vortex moving air through the hive, and they'll perspirate moisture at the same time. That creates basically this AC effect. So they're totally climatically self-controlled on the inside, and they will take advantage of all of these weep holes that we have added into the hive, both sealing them up or patching them and opening them up when they want them. So they're totally self-dependent that way. So it's really cool. Bees are phenomenal creatures. So let's go ahead and get these on here and we'll just move forward. Okay, so the way that we're doing this, I'm going to put a staple around the centers and then on either end, basically doing a square around all 3 holes. Now you can see those didn't seat all the way in this nice high quality wood, so I'm just going to take a hammer and tamp that down a little bit. We're gonna do the same thing on all 4 corners here, and then slap this up on top of the box, and we're done. Now, if you have not opted for the metal upgrade to wrap the roof in metal, one of the things that I do, we have several hives with no metal on them at all. What I do is I take metal sheeting or metal siding or roofing, and I just put a little bit over it that just has a little bit of an overhang around the hive. And I just set it on top, and then I put a brick on top. When it's out there in the field, it works great. The brick holds it down from the wind, and the metal keeps the rain off the top. And then, of course, everything is painted, so it's really weather tight. Just make sure that when you do this, you're gonna get that exterior primer, at least 2 coats, on all of your exterior seams. And then go back through with your color coating and then your acrylic. This will be a nice solid roof. Okay, now something that's important to note when it comes time to painting your hive, and we'll walk you through this out in the next video series here. Don't paint the interior. You're not going to try to get anything on the inside of your holes. You're not going to try to get anything on the inside of the hive, especially not in the main box. The reason for that is the volatile chemicals are actually toxic to the bees. They have very sensitive scent glands, and they can smell all of that off-gassing, and it'll actually prevent the bees from wanting to live in your colony, live in your hive. It'll actually prevent the colony from wanting to live in your hive. So make sure that you're not painting the inside. All the paint stays on the outside just to protect against weather and to create that custom feel for you and your family. All right, so for the traps, it's really cut and paste. Just need something to cut the plastic here. We need a rubber mallet. We need a block of wood to hit with the rubber mallet to protect our trap. We need some glue, and that's it. No other tools are necessary until we're screwing on the door. So let's go ahead and bust into this. It's real fast. These ones are sweet. All right, so the first thing that I see when I open this up is gonna be the lid. So I'm just gonna do the lid first. The lid goes together exactly like the main big box. So we're just gonna go ahead and tape and glue the 2 ends and then slap on the smaller walls vertically. So I've glued both ends, making sure to line up my dowels with the dowels here. I'm just going to put these holes in a line, and just give it a little tap to hold it in place before you set it all the way in. Okay, then I'm going to do the exact same thing on this side. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on this longer board. And this is the lid back on the label. And that's it. Now we have the cage. So now our top, we're just going to go ahead and run the bead of glue all the way around the exterior in line with all of our holes. They're a little thin there. And then we're going to go ahead and take our framing and line it up with the holes and tamp it in. There you go, the lid is done. There's nothing else that we need to do to that lid. We don't ventilate it, we don't insulate it. There's no necessity for that with a trap because we're not keeping the bees in the traps through the winter. We're just catching them in the spring and transferring them to the hive. Okay, so for this one here, let me get the lid out of the way. Okay, so for the main box of the trap, I have the trap bottom on the label here, and I've got the trap front with the two cutouts. It really doesn't matter if you're starting on the front or the back. It all goes together in one way here. So all we're gonna do is we're gonna take the bottom and we're gonna set it on the sidewall. And we're gonna do the exact same thing when it comes time to put this other sidewall right here. So let's go ahead and glue that. Now we're taking, I'm gonna do it with the sticker on the outside. It doesn't really matter in which way you put it on. I'm gonna go ahead and just give that a little tap and then smack it in with my block of wood. Always being careful not to break any of these dowels. Okay, now the same thing on the next piece for the side wall here. It'll say trap back. So you have the back and the front. I'm gonna call it the side wall because it's a side, I guess. I'm just gonna hit that one with my hand. And that's done. Now you can go ahead and rotate it over. Now once it's rotated over and we've got this figure here, we can go ahead and put on the next wall, okay? So now we have the actual side. Now the actual side on the label is actually gonna say trap right side and trap left side. I'm just gonna go ahead and glue the entire exterior perimeter again. And then being careful not to get that on your wife's table. Go ahead and smack that one into place too. And I'll go ahead and sure it up a little bit. Okay, now this same process on this side. Glue the exterior. Set it into place. And there you have it, one trap ready to go. We go ahead and put our lid on top. And the next step is just to drill out the door. Okay, to go ahead and drill this out, we're gonna get our Forstner bit again, and we're gonna follow the pre-drilled hole here. And we're just gonna drill that hole the same exact way that we did before. Making sure that we've got another block of wood placed on the inside like we did for the hive, and then send that out and fasten your door, and then we can go ahead and slap our lid on, and your frame, your trap is done, and we can move on to frames. Okay, I've got my block of wood in there pressed up against where the pre-drill hole is so that when I go through with my Forstner bit, I'm not breaking out the bottom. And we're gonna do a slight taper on this as well to shed water so we're not filling it up in the rain. Okay, that one loosened on me a little bit, but it didn't shatter anything. I'm gonna go ahead and clean off all the debris here. All right, we're gonna go ahead and throw the Phillips on, And then for this one, I'm actually going to use our really nice 3D printed ones. I actually really like these ones over the metal. They hold up really well in the weather. And then this tab is so much easier. I cut myself on the stainless steel ones all the time, because when you come out there to grab the edge, it's just a little divot that is that's fabricated in there, and it's not really welded on tab like we have here, where we've got this nice lip here to grab. And so I don't ever cut myself on these. I never have to worry about losing a fingernail trying to force it over, because the bees will actually lock it in place with propolis, and it just drives me crazy to try to force it when I don't want to put a suit on or anything like that, and I'm walking out there just to deal with it real quick. And then all the bees are coming and going, and they are like, what's going on? This was supposed to be a 3-second, millisecond little switch of the door, and now it's this whole event, shaking everybody up and stopping them in their work process just to try to get them to move the door. So this is the way to go. I really love these. I use them on all of my hives instead of the metal ones now. Very rigid and strong, 5/8 cabinet grade lumber. Really love these. They hold up great. Very easy to hang in the trees. And then when it comes time to actually removing the bees from the trees, all you do is move this to the closed position, and you don't need a suit. You can take this out of the tree without suiting up, without smoking the bees, without trying to do anything. Just come in the early morning before the bees have left and started to forage, or late at night after they've all retired for the evening. That's the way that I like to do it. Makes it nice and painless. You can catch swarms like crazy. Move this, pull these frames out, put it right into the other hive, and then put this right back in the tree and catch another one. All right, guys, let's get into how we're gonna assemble the frames now. So in your kit, you had 20 of your frame bottoms and 20 of the beehive frames top bar, and then you also have 20 of the frame sides. I'm sorry, 40 of the frame sides, okay? In total, we're gonna end up with 20 frames. All right, now before we start here, let me just address a cool point here. We've gone ahead and designed a assembly jig to help you with your frames. It's not a full-on wiring and assembly jig that we would use here at the shop, but it's convenient enough for you at home doing just a couple hives. If you're gonna do something a little bit more extensive like an apiary package, I recommend that you look at the higher level plans and put together something a lot more streamlined. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and take your top bar, and we're going to put a dab of glue on the end there and on the end there. And then we're going to fasten it into the jig. And then we're going to take your 2 ends, and we're going to fasten them into the jig as well. Just gonna make sure everything is lined up nice. I'm gonna do a dab of glue on the ends. Okay, so now at this point, everything is kind of set into place. You've got glue on it, so we're just gonna go ahead and brad nail it in. All right, so what I like to do is I like to set it on my leg right here, and that way I can get some pressure to pull the bottom bar and the top bar into the side bars and make sure that everything is nice and tight. I'm gonna do just 3 nails, and then we're gonna flip it over, do the same thing over here. And then for the bottom plate, the bottom bar, same thing, just make sure that it's centered. And we just do 2. Flip it around, do the same thing. And there you have it. Now the next stage, once you've got this all assembled and ready to rock and roll, is we're gonna have to drill out the holes and then wire it. So as it stands just like this, is not how we put it in the hive. We want the wires so that we can actually keep the foundation on that wire to give the bees a starting place, to incentivize them to go straight down with our frames. If we don't give them a starting place, sometimes they can start in between the two. A bit of grief when you're lifting it out and you got to lift 6 frames all at once, because it's all glued together essentially. So that's why we wire the frames. Okay, so right here we have a couple frames that are drilled out. So we've done 4 evenly distributed holes across the top and 4 evenly distributed holes across the bottom. Now, these are pre-drilled for you so that you know where to place your drill bit. They should have a little notch in each side that tells you exactly where we're drilling them out. Now, once you've gone from the position of having them glued and assembled to having them drilled out, or vice versa. So my wife likes to drill them out first, so it's totally up to you. Then you're gonna wire them. This is what they should come out like. So this has actually been in operation. This has propolis all over it. And the idea, this is actually a little bit loose. The idea is that you're gonna be able to play it like a violin or like a guitar. You want really tight, nice tight wires. So this one here can actually be tightened up. So let's go ahead and move on into how we're going to do the wiring. All right, real quick, I just want to make a quick point. When we are assembling these frames, it's really important that your top bar is flush with your side bar. If you have a just a little bit off kilter, let's say that the side bar was up a little bit higher than your top bar, then when you put two frames side by side, that side would actually prevent the two top bars from meeting, and it would create a gap. And that gap allows hive beetles to come out, and maybe can be too small sometimes for the bees to get out. And so if the hive beetles can crawl through it and they can get into this top chamber where no bees are, then it can actually create a safe haven for all those hive beetles to hide. So it's really important. That's why we use CNC machines. That's why we do our best to make sure everything is tight in this hive. We want to make sure that we're dealing with insects, right? We want to make sure that we're nice and tight between everything that a bee or a beetle or a larva of any kind might be able to squeeze through. So that being the case, we use tight tolerances and small bits, and we try to keep everything as clean as we can. So when you're going and doing this yourself, just make sure that you're aligning your side bars with your top bars, and you'll be okay. All right, now we're ready to go ahead and start wiring, but before we can do that, we need to protect the frame from the tightness of the wire eating through the wood. The way that we do that's pretty simple. We are just gonna use our handy dandy staple gun again. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna come into here and we're gonna put staples on the inside of these two holes and the inside of these two holes. Then we're gonna flip it over and we're gonna do the inside of these two center holes. And I'll show you why when we start wiring. So step one. Okay, so now we've gone ahead and I've cinched up all these screws. Now when you're using this, set the depth on the staple gun that you're using, or use a nicer stapler gun or an air gun or something with a little bit of electricity behind it to give it that extra push, because this is really high quality wood and it's a lot denser than the traditional ply. So that's why the staples are having a little bit of a hard time going into it. So if you're having the same problem, that's the issue. Just get a little bit more power behind the tool that you're using. Now we're gonna put the wire to go across all of those, and that's going to hold it from digging up inside of the wood. And then I've got the same thing on this end here as well. So let's go ahead and wire. So I'm just going to set my my frame down inside the jig, get it nice and tight, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of tension there to hold it in place. And then all we do, it's pretty simple, straighten out my wire here. I'm going to go through the first hole, all the way out, up to the second hole, give myself some length, and then go back in, and back in, and we're just going to run this through all the way. Now we don't want to go with too much length right here at the end, because what I like to do is I'm going to fold it over. All right, now all I do when I get to the end here is I'm just gonna fold it over a little bit. I'm gonna staple that. And then I'm gonna fold it back over and staple it again. And then I'll just tamp that with a hammer. Hand me that hammer. There's a couple other ways to do it, but this is what works for us. Now, when you're doing this at home, this jig right here, we get from Dr. Leo Sharashkin. This is his inspired model. We don't build this or sell this ourselves. I highly recommend that you look at all kinds of different options for the Layens frame and how to manage the Layens frame. It's always handy as a beekeeper, especially if you have an apiary, to have a wiring jig. There are tons and tons of people that have made crazy cool wiring jigs all over the country. I particularly like this one because it works really well for our purposes. And I can get the frame done in about 30 seconds, on 35 to 45 seconds, I should say, on a consistent basis, pumping a bunch out. So works pretty good. So that's it. All right, guys, thank you so much for going on the journey with us as we've been over the last several years, kind of tweaking and fine tuning things to make this a reality. Originally, when we started, this was the model that we were working with. We had to cut every single one of these out of really thin quarter ply, and we used 2x4s, and we're doing rip cuts and dado blades to make all of this happen, and the interior framing. It was a jigsaw puzzle that would go together like this, and we had to cut this entire stack on a table saw, and it was, needless to say, exhausting. We did a lot. We did everything from the workshops with the community, where at the time I was serving in this initiative with my church, and I was asked in a service capacity to help with that and coordinate it. And it inspired me to see what was possible when people came together to do this. But it was so labor intensive, and I was like, how do I help more people with this? And when the initiative was dissolved, I couldn't run around and make that a reality for folks. And I felt like beekeeping is such a cornerstone of a homestead that I wanted to see it perpetuate. And I love the model of the horizontal hive. I love the insulation. I was so inspired by Dr. Leo and what he had done. And so I took the roots, the foundation of everything that I felt like I was guided to, and that God had kind of placed me in the midst of, and I started to fine tune it. Started to figure out ways that it would work even better and more efficiently, and that we could get it to more people, and that we could expedite the process of actually being able to do it. And so now, today, I'm standing in front of all of these hives that, this is Mach 4, that we have created over a series of trial and error. This kit right here, you just walked through the assembly with me on a kitchen table. Originally, we had several check stations. There was about 6 stations we would rotate through. Everything from a table saw to, on this side, just to do rip cuts, and then on this side we were doing dado blade cuts on another table saw, which is 2 saw blades side by side, basically. Then we had a chop saw over here, and we were making jigs and fancy things to be able to do the cuts over and over and over and over and over again. And so now we've taken it, and we can now CNC cut all of that material in a matter of about 5 minutes, roughly. And once it's all completely CNC cut, maybe another 10 to 15 minutes for the labor of moving wood back and forth and stacking it all up and wrapping it in saran, right? And now once it's all produced and we put it into these kits here, we get pack A, pack B, and then it gets to the assembly shop, and then that's where we add in all the extra material required for you to fully assemble the hive, such as the hive doors, the screens, and the 2x4 framing to be able to cut out all of these doors. And it wasn't like that when we started. And so now, today, just as we've been filming this, we've assembled 2 traps and the hive that I walked you through. And yesterday we assembled 3 beehives, and I'm a father of 6 and a husband, and I run a business, and we're cleaning and organizing and moving and all these things at the same time. And we're able to do all of that simultaneously because of the labor of love that we put into making this happen. So I just wanted to say thank you for being a part of our journey. The funds that you've paid to purchase your hive don't only help my family and what we've sought to accomplish, but it helps the mission and vision behind TIAG and Haven Permaculture as a whole. It helps us be able to support more families in creating regenerative, self-sufficient communities, and it helps us to further the mission and the vision of natural beekeeping over the conventional synthetic and chemically inundated methods. So super, super inspired to be able to see what families are doing with what we've been able to put together, and it touches my heart to be a part of your life and your journey. I'm glad we could cross paths in this way. So thank you so much. If you have any questions about the assembly, you ever need any help, if you would like to learn more about more services we offer, such as food forest designs, apiary installation, full service management, if you want to get into the PMC program, where I'll actually come help you build and develop your entire permaculture property on any scale of acreage, there's several ways that we can support you. We have free resources, planting guides, we got seeds, we got a lot of collaboration across the United States of America. So stay tuned, connect with us. You can go to TIAGcommunity.com to learn more. You can find Haven Permaculture and the Independent American Gardener on YouTube, and you can go to lulusgarden.com. And of course, always reach out by email if you want to reach the customer service at support@tiagcommunity.com, or you can go to the official community and visit with us and all the other families that are part of this vision at tiagcommunities.org. Talk soon.